Hi, this is Charlene O'Hanlon, Managing Editor at DevOps.com and DevOps TV. And I am here in the second day of the DevOps Enterprise Summit here in Las Vegas. And I have some very smart gentlemen at the table with me here. And we are going to talk about DevOps trends, very open-ended questions. So hoping to get some really, really interesting insights out of today's conversation. So right to my left, I have Eric Robertson, who is with CollabNet. To his left is Robert Reeves with Datical, and to his left is Derek Langone with XebiaLabs. So welcome, gentlemen. Thank you very much for taking the time and talking with me today.
Of course.
Thank you.
How's the show going?
Great.
Yeah?
Very well.
Yeah.
And am I the only one that's wondering who the smart guys in the room are with us? Because I don't see anyone else.
I don't know. I kind of looked around also. So,
Well, then we'll just make things up as we go along. How's
hey,
that?
Well, it works for our business.
That's
so.
all right, well, all right.
The type of business
the
we're in.
truth is being spoken here today. Now I know.
It's a very DevOps thing to say.
It's a very DevOps thing to say, right?
All right, great. Well, let's just start the conversation. What are we looking at as far as trends in the DevOps space? Maybe what are you guys seeing today? What are you guys seeing maybe kind of coming down the line in a year or so? Love to get your insight. Who wants to start?
Yeah. So,
Go ahead, Eric.
Yeah, I can start first.
Okay.
I'm starting to see the executives start getting involved in the conversation and start really understanding how does DevOps relate to them from a business standpoint, from a business value standpoint, because you're saying, okay, just because you delivered a piece of software, you may have delivered on time, you have high quality, but how does that map to my business objectives? How does that map to what my customer actually needs at this time to drive my business? So that is a trend I'm starting to see pretty much around my customers and talking with them.
Yeah, I'd agree. See some of that.
Yeah, DevOps won.
Yeah.
Right? It's working. We're doing it. Make peace with it. But the trend that I'm really seeing, and you're absolutely right about getting executives involved, is that it's also starting to expand throughout the organization, and maybe that's because the execs are involved. Prior to maybe this year, there's a lot of silos that were adopting DevOps, and we're doing DevOps centers of excellence, and now. The folks that are doing DevOps and have done it for a while are kind of reaching across to their friends in database land, in mainframe land, network security. And that's a good thing, because that's kind of what DevOps teaches us. Fix something and then look for the next thing to fix and the next thing. And so it appears that the early adopters have really taken it to the application layer, and now they're expanding it. And that's a good thing. The more people that are part of this process, the better our companies deliver software.
Right, and building on their comments, I think you're absolutely right. We see the business more involved day to day and really driving a lot of these decisions from the top down. We also see, I think, some early success stories that Robert mentioned, silos of success, right? And I think that the biggest trend that we see within our own clients is I see pockets of success. I've got enough interest and enough sort of perpetual motion established that I want to do more. Now, how do I do this at scale? How do I do this across the enterprise? How do I build sort of one system of moving applications from planning to production that everybody can use? And we're participating in that process, and that's really nice to see. And that's generally a business-led initiative where IT and business have really converged to solve that problem. So that's one absolute trend that I think continues and is really just starting to hit an acceleration point. The second is the migration to the cloud. We see most of our projects with clients start around, hey, I want to move to a shared infrastructure. I want to move to public infrastructure. How do I do that? How do I do that in a compliant way? So I think this, I'm last to the party. I think this cloud thing here is here to stay. So we're embracing it, but we really do see that is sort of the tip of the spear in our enterprise clients relative to DevOps. Like their perception of DevOps is, hey, I can really migrate and move faster, increase velocity, increase standardization, but ultimately my destination is to move to public cloud.
Oh, totally. DevOps is the cloud enabler. All right, when you separate the what from the where, we're no longer using people to move software out the door. We are able to say, okay, well, where do you want to push it? We're not going to do it internal behind the firewall.
Exactly.
We're going to. Why can't we go to the cloud? What's stopping us? and you start dealing with little edge cases, and the business side has to decide:
Exactly.
is it worth it?
Right, exactly. Yeah, that's very
Sometimes it's no.
Sometimes it's no, exactly. And I want to hit back on what Derek said about the scaling. So what we're seeing in our business is the agile to start in the teams, but now they need to scale up to the program portfolio level. And how do they start bringing in these initiatives? And then how do they scale across? And that's the scaling across in the DevOps, which goes into the point that Robert's making about being able to have options around being able to deploy based upon the different cost models or value models that they're running within their business.
Okay. All right. So circling back to your comment about kind of little islands of success, if you will, within the organization and kind of spreading out. It seems to me that the DevOps organizations, those companies that have adopted and are very successful in their DevOps implementations are those that have started small and then migrated out. So, and it also seems that those are the ones that adopted DevOps kind of from that top-down philosophy. They really, leadership, management really drove DevOps within the organization. So what do you guys see in terms of companies that maybe still need to be tweaked, if you will, to really kind of see that success? So yeah, do you see that happening, or are these companies kind of beyond repair at this point?
No, they're beyond repair. No, they're not. Again, it goes back. It's interesting. They're seeing success in very siloed areas. The question is, how do they scale that? Scale that up and scale that across? And that's really the question. And of course, there's different methodologies. You're hearing about SAFe and next days and these different methodologies coming in from there. So it's really about how do you, it's a transformation, right? It's a scaling transformation around that. So they have to look at it from the tools, the process, and even the people standpoint. So it's really about how do you understand and look at that from that standpoint. And the terminology that we're kind of hearing also is this terminology around value stream or value stream management.
Yes.
We're just really looking at it more from a higher level, strategic type of level, from the ideation side of the house, all the way from the delivery. And what does that really mean, and how does that tie back in?
Well, it's nice that they teach value streams in business school.
Yeah.
So a management's getting an MBA, and then the techies are like, "Oh, we're doing value stream mapping." So it's nice that they can talk and talk about the same thing. They're on the same page.
So it's like a common language now that they can start, right? They can both understand the kind of like the Star Trek Universal Translator, right?
Too. Yes. I mean, it's if I'm speaking French and you're speaking German, we might be able to figure out generally what we're talking about, but there's never going to be that one-on-one.
Exactly. So that helps.
Right. Yeah, I would say, the inflection point we see, and you mentioned it, is, I think we've all sort of talked about it, that DevOps, starts in these silos. You realize a certain level of success, and then you quickly sort of hit a glass ceiling, right? It just doesn't sort of scale beyond that. And in those little departments, there's a feeling that, hey, we've accomplished something. But it's not until somebody at the top really starts to drive the sort of funding, the executive level buy-in, the commitment across the organization, that things really start to transcend and accelerate. And we try to be, as a vendor, somewhat a change agent inside of organizations to coach executives that, look, the IT people alone can't solve this problem because they're not funded well, they're not organized in a certain way. So you need to, from a leadership perspective, drive that organization, the commitment, and show, sort of the funding that's required to get this accomplished. And then they realize incredible benefit. And that's really where we see a massive acceleration. And I think that trend is continuing as companies are having a harder and harder time differentiating from one another in their respective businesses. You think about like our banking customers, like how do you differentiate? And what's interesting when you talk to these, we've got half a dozen Fortune 100 banks as customers. They're not even afraid of each other anymore. They're afraid of the disruptive technologies like Apple Pay and PayPal and things like that. So they need to behave differently.
Yeah, the innovation.
And it's really taking sort of executive and business influence to be able to sort of motivate an old legacy customer like that to sort of behave differently and change their processes and their people. More so than tooling or anything else.
Yeah, that's a very good point. We have a customer right now, they're a mainframe, they're a mainframe shop, and they basically have an ERP system that's running their mainframe. And so they're looking at how can they transform this mainframe, basically keep the technologies on the mainframe, but maybe offer it as a SaaS, to be able
Yes.
to compete
Yes.
against other ERP vendors out there in the cloud. So it's basically, instead of looking at it from a project, but looking at it as a product portfolio, and how can they innovate very fast in that area as
They
well.
have to, you know, they have to do, they must be an incumbent disruptor.
Yes,
And
they have to
maybe that's a
disrupt
trend.
themselves. Yeah,
And because, you know, you're absolutely right. They're not afraid of each other. What
Yeah.
they're afraid is startups like Dave.com,
Yeah.
which is Mark Cuban-backed startup that for $1 a month will monitor your account. And if it gets a little too low, it will do an automatic $70 loan to cover for NSF fees. Well, banks make a lot of money off of that.
yes,
And if
yes.
that disappears, it's no longer profitable to
Right.
be a bank. So
Right.
now banks are okay. Do we just close our ears, la 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 la,
Yeah.
ignore it, or do they offer a different type of overdraft protection
Yeah.
to compete?
Yeah.
They must be fast followers.
Yeah, exactly.
And one of the large banks is going to figure this out, and they're going to win.
Yeah.
And it's are you going to take that competition from the fintech startups and use it and learn from them, or are you just going to ignore it and fail?
Yeah.
Or do you just
Yeah.
buy them?
Well, yes, it's a
Yeah,
rounding
but-
error.
But it's about applying the logic and the feature, right? It's not about necessarily buying that small company Dave.com. They could come up with their own sort of recipe. It's a
Right.
matter of committing to the fact that we're going to lose this highly profitable element of our business
Exactly.
unless we change, right?
Exactly.
I mean, I'll use another example. We've got several airline customers, and the business is heavily involved in the IT decisions that happen inside of those airlines because it is so difficult for them to differentiate from one another, right? So the billions of dollars they spend a year on infrastructure and aircraft and crews and all these different things get boiled down to the experience they can deliver on a mobile application that allows you to change your reservation on the fly more so than another airline is the difference between you booking that plane seat and another airline's plane seat. And they realize this, and they are really sort of in this incredible competition with one another to sort of, deliver more and more value in a very streamlined, efficient way to their end user customers. And that's a matter of survival for them.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's all about, to them, is basically, to go to Robert's point, they become a disruptor themselves, or someone will disrupt them.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Well,
Right,
a lot of
so-
those features now are just table stakes, though. I mean, that's what the customer expects because
Right.
they've gotten it from one company. So
Right.
why isn't this company doing
Exactly.
Right, exactly.
So-
So that's all about how can I innovate very quickly, but get these features. Again, I could get the features out very quickly, but if they're not aligned to the value and the features that my customers are expecting in the time that they're expecting, then it doesn't matter.
it? Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, look, their expectations are actually set by the Facebooks,
Yeah.
Instagrams, those companies who are releasing that mobile app
Yeah.
every week.
Yeah.
And from a consumer's perspective, there's no difference between the bank app and and Facebook. All right, doesn't matter. All right, that's what they expect. If Facebook can do it, this bank should do it. And so, as far as trends, it's the realization, I think, that you're not competing against other airlines, other banks. You're competing against the expectations that these really fast movers are
Right.
setting for the consumer.
Yeah.
And if you're able to just just be a little bit faster than your
Yeah.
competition, you could aspire to be those fast movers. You're going to win.
Exactly.
You don't have to beat them. You don't have to beat Netflix.
Right.
You just have to be kind of sort of like Netflix.
Kind of sort of
A
like that.
little bit.
That's right.
Yeah.
And be able to move fast.
So then from from a culture perspective, what are some of the things that you guys are seeing about? Actually, before I do that, I want to go back to your comment where you say DevOps 1.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Make peace with it.
I don't necessarily agree because DevOps is a work in progress.
Well, that's the point.
So
It's iterative.
standing on the aircraft carrier and saying we did it is I don't think is ever going to happen in DevOps. I think for every successful DevOps implementation, you've got probably 10 or so that failed. So there's still a lot of work to be done in the DevOps space, and either it's adjusting the culture or helping companies understand that DevOps is a way that they can survive in today's digital transformation environment.
You're right. There's some folks that are getting it and doing very well. and are very vocal about their DevOps initiatives and the successes they've had. And there have been failures. That's okay. Gene, the DevOps confessions, which he was closing out the first day, the morning session. And but that's okay. Failure's all right. But I do think that those failures are the result of we have engineers, we have technical folks that are holding on to an old way of doing business. And it is about themselves. They are focused on their needs, where they fit in the world, and those sorts of things. And they've not taken that step to realize that if they change, if they evolve, if they grow as individuals, and they increase the value of themselves to the company does well, and they do well. And so some people get that, some people don't. So I do believe DevOps won, but I don't think all companies are going to win. And we certainly see the projections on average lifespan on the S&P 500 is plummeting. Rest in peace, Sears. It's just that's where it goes.
It goes back to the culture. I think the culture is very key, and it's got to be driven at the business executive level. It's got to be driven from that standpoint, because it's kind of interesting. I was with a customer, and it was an initiative making work visible across the organization. And it was driven at the executive level. And I was talking to the people that do the work, the underlings, as they say. And they're so excited that the executives were basically coming to them and to Robert's point, valuing them. Because before it becomes kind of a competition type of thing, right? I got to protect my turf. We're going to do this DevOps, but I got to protect my turf here. So I'm going to be looking at this. I'll say, we're all working together, but I'm still going to be looking at the fence. But the management say that we're all in this together, and if we're opening, actually changing the culture to make this successful, that is huge. And that's a critical piece.
It's a motivator. I mean, we use a lot of sort of personal benefit selling. That this benefits the company, but it also benefits you as an individual. You really build out your skill set. You make yourself more valuable. You become a change agent. You sort of reinvigorate your career that may be 10, 20 years old, right? And we see people really embracing that, and that's powerful because it's about the people. I mean, you can use different tooling and you can use different processes, but really at the end of the day, the people need to buy in. So to your point, having executive buy-in to projects and sponsorship does motivate the rank and file. And I think the rank and file are now being motivated because they're seeing success around them. Like this show is a great representative example of what I love is when a 115-year-old insurance company stands up in front of the crowd and says, look, if we can do DevOps, anybody can do DevOps. Right? The fact is that's true, But what it took in that 115-year-old company is the executive leadership to say, look, we want to be around for another 115 years, so we need to change and evolve. And it's an incremental sort of move towards DevOps. It isn't a boil the ocean approach, and that's the right strategy. And we see, as much as there's failures, there's enough success stories now that should be really motivating.
There's a lot of success patterns out there that can be followed. And to Derek's point, like, it's companies out there 150 years old, they can renovate themselves.
So do you think that there are companies out there that are doing DevOps and they don't even realize that they're doing DevOps?
I think it's everywhere. Yeah, I mean, DevOps has been around since software was created, right? So ambitious engineers have been trying to find ways to be more efficient for years and years. It just didn't have a label on it. So I think that there's not a look, we service the Global 2000. There isn't a Global 2000 company that isn't doing DevOps in some variant right now.
Yeah, some people argue they were doing DevOps on their Commodore 64. I mean, it's just basically an integrated type of process and streamline.
There will always be some release manager, that just really wants to get out of the office and doesn't want to deal with this.
Exactly.
I was like, you know what? We're going to do self-service for you because I got dinner reservations.
Exactly.
Motivations are different for everybody. So who am I to judge? So let's do a little crystal ball action here. Let's talk about wrapping things up. Where you guys see the space moving, say, 5 years from now? Derek, why don't you start?
Yeah, I think 5 years from now that we have got 80% of the workloads that get transacted in the cloud. I think that's just the biggest certainty. I mean, we've oriented our business to take advantage of that shift. We're an enabler, and honestly, we're putting a lot of resource and horsepower behind that because I think that's a trend that everybody can see. It's very visible, and I think it's only started. I do think that accelerates quite a bit, and some of the obstacles that have traditionally been in the way, like security and things like that, have been solved. And I think that there's just that that ease of migrating to new infrastructure is so appropriate now that we'll see an acceleration in the next 5 years. So I feel like, if you're not orienting your business to take advantage of this cloud shift, then you're making a mistake.
Okay. Robert?
Well, I think there are two predictions. One is we are going to see in the first half of next year another colossal deployment failure that leads to a huge loss in market capitalization.
Do you know something we don't?
I'm just saying, I think we're due for another night capital. I really do. We're due for another bad deployment that takes a company down. It's been a little quiet. And I know not everybody has adopted it, and not everybody's going to be able to respond quickly. And I think that's going to spur folks. That's where the stick comes in and not the carrot, for the executives.
Yes.
And then second prediction, Red Sox in 5.
You had to do it, didn't you?
Do what?
You had to do it. I'm not even gonna. I'm just gonna move on.
She's not gonna respond on that one.
Are you gonna fix that in
God bless
post?
my Yankees. God bless my Yankees. So, Eric, what about you?
I think artificial intelligence and analytics are going to play a very large role, and it's going to be the AI dev and AI ops.
And AI ops, I definitely agree with you on that. I think that's going to be the big buzzword next year. We're going to hear a lot about that. All right.
So weird.
Well, gentlemen, and Robert, thank you very much. Thanks so much for having the conversation with me.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure. Always
Likewise.
is.
Thanks for having us.
All right,
Yeah,
thank you. Appreciate it.
That's right.